So back to our virtual main stage here. And it's 1 o'clock now, so we're bang on time. This is great. Our next speaker is Audrey Meehan, and Audrey is from Innopharma, who are exhibiting today here on the virtualrecruitment.ie virtual platform, as it were. So we're delighted to welcome her to the stage. Audrey is talking about the program for contract validation engineer or QC analyst roles. Audrey, you're very welcome to the Recruitment Expo. All well on your side?
Yes, thanks, Ruth. Great to be here and talking to everyone. So it's lovely to have the opportunity to present. I'm going to give a bit of an overview of the program we run, and by all means stop by the stands and chat to some of my colleagues.
If I can just remind people that you'll be speaking for 20-25 minutes thereabouts. We'll have about 5 minutes for questions at the end. And if people have questions, they can pop them in the chat function as well during this, and I'll hopefully then have time to come to you at the end with it. So Audrey, I'll hand over to you now. The floor is yours.
Thanks a million. So just a little bit of an intro to me. I won't talk too much about myself. I worked for many years in the area of validation in the pharma sector. So Elan, which is now Alkermes, Wyeth, and then Pfizer. So for the last 7 years, I've been working for Innopharma, and I was just thinking, as Katrina was talking about, aligning your own goals with the company goals and having a correlation there. Definitely, that is the case for me in Innopharma. So just a bit about the company, because it is an unusual one. We started back in 2009 as a company that was launching process analytical technologies for the pharma sector. And then very quickly we branched out and we got involved with the HEA in Dublin and ITT, delivering upskilling programs for the pharma and medtech sector. So a lot of people are very familiar with Innopharma, more from our education side of things. And then in 2011, our first set of graduates were going out into the workplace. In 2012, we launched the ICON, which is a particle size analyzer. And then we moved into Springboard and a level 8 pharma and medtech program, which has been running successfully for a number of years. We expanded our programs into masters and level 6 programs in the next few years. And then in 2015, we launched the Multi-Eye, which is a near-infrared technology. And we launched our science department with Griffith College. We have some business and pharma programs running there. And then in 2016, we really started to think about what else can we do, because we were uniquely linked to the sector, being suppliers into the area, but we were also upskilling people and helping them get roles in the industry. And we could see there was a massive shortage of validation specialists and engineers. And many of us that work for Innopharma have come from industry. So we are kind of uniquely placed to develop and deliver training to people to try and meet the skills shortage in that area. So that's where I've been primarily focused since 2016. And then in 2019, we also launched a similar program with more of a focus on QC analysts. Because at that time we had built our own lab. So we had some of the instrumentation needed to do that hands-on training with people. So both programs are running in parallel. I'm slightly biased, so I'll probably focus a little bit more on the validation side of things. So in terms of the tech services division, so the company is essentially has 3 strands to it. You've got the education side, the technology side, and then tech services. So we're very much a service industry to the medtech and the biopharma sector. So we're really looking to select, train, and supply people to work in that area. And all 3 words are very important there. We don't just take random people and put them through the training programs. We do have a selection process because there is quite a bit of interest as our name has built up over the years. And I know Fiona Fennell was talking earlier. She was very much a key player in our startup, and we've worked closely with her for a number of years. So selecting the right people, because it doesn't matter what training you give them. If you don't have the right attitude and approach to things, no amount of training is going to bring you to the level that you need to be at. So, you know, selection, training, and then matching them up with the right client as well. You know, we do spend a lot of time talking to our clients to see what are they looking for. Not only the technical skill sets, but as we've built up those relationships over time, we do get used to the type of people, the kind of organizational fit that will work for individual clients. So we do keep that in mind as well. So in terms of the services we offer, we're very heavily involved in process cleaning and equipment qualification, but we have people working in maybe more project management roles, project engineering roles, and even quality assurance. And then in recent times, we've also started supplying people into the QC organizations to support and supplement their own analyst team for release testing, for example. And we span right across from oral solid dose, you know, your traditional tableting and encapsulation type facilities, into biopharma, which is an ever-growing sector, and the medtech sector equally. So all of the industries we do supply people to. So for those of you who maybe have never really come across the term validation and you're wondering what it is, it's very much, and this is kind of a definition that's been around for a long time, establishing documented evidence to show that a process or a procedure or an activity carried out maintains the desired level of compliance at all stages. So it's really, we're trying to demonstrate that if we're looking at a process, that the process produces product that meets the quality requirements, and that every batch will meet those requirements. The documentary evidence, there's no escaping it. There's a lot of documentation and paperwork associated with validation. I'm not going to lie about that one. In terms of the scope of validation, once you start thinking about what could affect the product quality, you realize the scope of the validation activities at a given site can be quite broad and far-reaching. So, for example, the facility that we're making the products in, that needs to be fit for purpose. We can't set up anywhere and start making product. We have to make sure it's designed correctly, laid out correctly, but even the fabric and the materials we use to construct the facility, that they're not going to shed and cause contamination to our products. You know, there's no point saying, oh, I'm going to do all this process control if the equipment I'm using isn't fit for purpose and won't maintain the required tolerances that we need. So we spend a lot of time qualifying equipment and utilities and making sure they're operating correctly. The process itself is the one most people will think of. You know, you're thinking of tablets, vaccines, stents, that process by which they're manufactured, we need to make sure that's robust and reproducible. Cleaning is one that's become much bigger in recent times, because as companies have moved from maybe having one large volume product, you know, and being able to have a dedicated facility, companies are moving to multi-product production and having to swap from one process to another. And what you don't want to have is cross-contamination from one product into another. That could be detrimental for some of our patients. So cleaning validation and proving that that cleaning process gives us equipment that's sufficiently clean so that we won't have those cross-contamination issues. We can't forget about the lab. The lab are doing a very important role of testing our products and proving that they're conforming to specifications and highlighting where they're not. But those tests that they perform, how do we know that those tests are actually accurate tests? So we have to make sure the instruments they're using are calibrated, they're properly set up, are capable of doing the analysis that we want, and that the analytical test method itself is precise and gives us accurate results. Computer systems validation is an area that's just growing so much in recent times, because more and more companies are moving to more and more automated systems. And you can even see in the last year, a lot of companies have tried to push even further with the level of automation. Even simple things like getting documents approved electronically rather than hard copy and signing it makes it a lot easier when you're trying to manage a small team on site and keeping a lot of people distant. So the validation around those computer systems is key as well. And then packaging, you know, if you pick up a pack of paracetamol in the morning, we don't think for 2 seconds around the blister that it's sitting inside. But there's a science behind, the grade of foil that's used to seal that blister, the type of plastic that's used to form the blister, because that packaging is providing so much of an environment for those tablets from when it leaves our plant to when it reaches the patient. And that expiry date on that packaging is largely linked to the packaging format within it. You're saying it's good for the next 2 years, provided it's in that packaging, because it's, keeping out oxygen, preventing oxidation. So packaging is a huge area as well. So what do you need to be a validation engineer? Don't let the title fool you. You don't necessarily need to be an engineer. I'm personally not an engineer. So at a general education and academic level, we would look for a minimum of a level 8 in a science or an engineering discipline. And even at that, it has been hugely varied. We've had an aeronautical engineer transition from designing planes to validating equipment in a biopharma facility. Likewise, science is a very broad area. We've had people come from the geoscience backgrounds that have worked in the oil and gas industry and are looking to transition into pharma or medtech. So, we really want people that can get their heads around the process, understand it, ask the right questions, can get their heads around the equipment, not maybe at a technician level, understanding all of the nuts and bolts in there, but have a good understanding of how things work and can see where problems might occur. From a data perspective, we do look for a level of, basic statistics, being able to present data graphically or in tables is really important. And then technical writing skills is hugely important. So I've come across people that are most fantastic creative writers, and they would really struggle in a technical report writing role because, the creativity is taken out of it. You want a very concise report that's going to tell us what we need to know without any nice flowery language. We want it very consistent. So sometimes the two don't always go hand in hand. But, there's not only technical skills needed, we also look for a lot of soft skills. And they're probably a bit harder to get your head around. So we really look for people that can integrate and work well within a team. And often within validation, because of the variety of what we're doing, we're often dealing with different functions. So you're not necessarily just working with other validation engineers. You could be dealing with production people, the lab, the quality assurance people, the engineering team. So we have to be able to work and communicate with those people quite well. And, when things go wrong and we have issues to get over, we don't really want to be pointing the blame because that's counterproductive. We want people to say, right, we are where we are. How do we move forward? How do we fix it? So being able to integrate with other disciplines is really important. A right first time approach. It sounds very simple, but having someone, and we see it when we run through the program as well, if I give feedback to people on week 1 that maybe you could do this slightly differently, I'm always delighted to see that in the 2nd, 3rd and 4th week, they're applying that kind of feedback and avoiding those same pitfalls. So, trying to get things right the first time, being organized, you have a lot to do and maybe you have to do things in a particular sequence. So it's important that people understand that and can do it in that manner and take ownership for what they have. So, one of the feedback we got from a client recently was that our people are great for putting their hand up when there's an issue. Yeah, I'll look after it, I'll investigate it, and they bring it to completion. So we want people that will finish out. We want people that can think critically, have good judgment and can put it into context. In terms of the attitude, we're looking for a growth mindset. I was chatting to one of our colleagues lately and, he was told his project's going a different direction. And he just took it on the chin and said, you know what, it's great. I learn a new skill by going this way about it. I'm looking forward to the challenge. And that's refreshing. And you enjoy working with that type of person. We want people that can manage themselves, that they're able to kind of drive their own destiny a small bit and kind of see the big picture. So in terms of the program itself, it's a 14-week program, and we've pulled it together based on some feedback from clients as well, and they've given us some suggestions on how we can make the program more applicable to what they're doing. So there's kind of three main strands. Because the pharma and medtech sector is so regulated, we can't ignore the regulatory framework. So we do have to touch on the regulatory requirements, but it's, you know, how does that apply to different companies? There's not one way of doing things. There could be a few different ways of doing the same thing and it being equally compliant. So we try and explain those nuances to people. We focus from a technical perspective on equipment and utilities, cleaning and process validation, but we also put it in the context of solid oral dose, biopharma and medtech as well. So there's an awful lot of technical know-how that comes to the fore. And then we tie in a lot of the business processes. You know, validation is linked to change management, for example. Nothing is static in the pharma sector or the medtech sector. We're considered and we're conservative, but we do want to make change. We do want to make improvements. But how can we do those changes in a controlled manner? How can we prove that the change is an improvement rather than a disimprovement? And that's where validation links in quite tightly there. We do a lot in terms of report writing. So if we cover a topic like process validation, over the next few weeks, you'd be writing a protocol, writing a report, given a data set, and presenting out your results and discussing it, because communication is so key. CAP is another area we delve into. It's another one of the support systems. While we don't want things to go wrong, we need to be able to react and respond appropriately when things do go wrong. So we do spend a lot of time working through some examples of failures and how might you go about it, how might you prove that's what happened, where would you look for data, and you know, understanding risk and how that ties into how we do business is really important. So there's a lot in the program, and I suppose the unique selling point for the participants on the program is that it's more of a hands-on learning environment. You know, it's not just theory. We're giving you the theory, but also making you put it into practice. So very much practical application of skills. And we have a fantastic facility in Sandyford in our pilot lab. And similarly for the QC group, there's a QC lab where we have HPLC, dissolution bats and other instrumentation that they can use. So this picture here in front of you is my lovely colleague Darren, and he's at our GPC G2, which is a fluid bed dryer and granulator. So it's really nice when you're talking about a process to be able to physically show people the process in operation, that they can get their head around the equipment, they can see, you know, the powder that goes into this equipment and comes out as a larger particle size. They can see that transformation. And then we also use the equipment to support, well, how would you test this equipment and prove that it works correctly? So that would be, the equipment would be used a lot in the equipment qualification side of the training as well. So in terms of the goal at the end is, once people have completed the training, is that they would come on board with Innopharma as our staff and work out at client facilities. So just to give you an idea of the types of work that people are doing, with people involved in HVAC, which is heating, ventilation and air conditioning qualification. Cleaning systems or CIP systems is hugely important in the industry. So a lot of people involved in qualifying those systems and then validating that they operate correctly, doing those cleaning validation studies. With people doing process validation studies. Certain clients have a lot of high containment requirements for very potent drugs. So we've had people, you know, maybe sourcing, speccing out that equipment and involved in bringing it in and getting it installed on site. Temperature mapping, I think we're all very familiar with these super cold freezers at the minute we're hearing about. But in the industry, there are certain materials that need to be stored either at fridge temperatures or freezer temps. So we need to map those units and make sure that all areas of the storage unit are at the same temperature, because it could impact the quality of the product if we don't. Vial filling, automated packaging lines, but even in the med tech sector, we have people working in new product introduction and maybe getting new equipment in to support that new products coming on stream, or supporting existing products with product improvements, addressing issues that have come out of investigations. So you can see the work is very varied. And that's why I stayed in validation for so long. There's always something new to get your head around, always something new to learn, maybe bigger projects to get involved in. And likewise, some people will go into a particular area of validation and just hone their skills in that area. So in terms of who's involved in the programme, you've met me already, so I won't talk about me. Luke is our Tech Services Director. He's got over 25 years of experience in the industry. Paula comes from the biopharma space, so she's really good at demonstrating aseptic techniques and some of the practices involved there. And then on the soft skill side of things, Caroline's hugely involved there. She liaises with our clients a lot to see kind of what their requirements are and to try and match their skill set is hugely important. She spends a lot of time coaching our people in terms of, what are the transferable skills they bring to the table? Because, even grads coming, they sometimes don't realize the strengths that they have. And it's to try and mine through their experiences and see, well, that project you worked on, you had to work as a team. You had to plan out all of the tests that you were going to do in that lab. That's project management. And pulling those stories together that they can sell themselves properly at interview is really important. So, in terms of the course contributors, we've all come from industry. So it's very relevant to the people, and we have very much closed loop feedback for the participants on the programme. We don't tend to take huge numbers because you dilute the benefit to the participants if you have too many. Because there's so much individual feedback, we found there's a nice number that's manageable. And then similarly on the QC side of things, we have a very experienced trainer in the analytical field, and she brings the QC analyst through sample prep, standard preparation, setup of the equipment, troubleshooting issues on the equipment. So, they've been inundated with requests for the QC experience, because for the grads as well, it's a lovely segue into industry because you're getting some experience. We call it an experiential learning program, but in a safe sandbox to make errors. So we always say, fail fast and fail here. And learn from those issues and bring that forward with you into your career. So, in terms of validation and QC, there's plenty of opportunities out there across Ireland in the medtech sector, the pharma and biopharma sector. If anything I've spoken about today sounds interesting and you'd like to hear more, don't be afraid to give us a shout and get in touch. We'll be starting the next programme probably mid-July. So we're actively looking to see who'd be interested in joining the programme. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. And thanks for listening.
Hi, I have my mask off now. I can speak to you again. Audrey, that was great. Oh my goodness, there was a lot of great information there. Thank you so much for that.
No problem.
I was wondering, with what's been going on in the world for the last 14, 15 months, is there much more of an interest now? Are you finding bigger numbers are more leaning more towards that kind of industry? Now that people have more of an understanding of, as you talked about, the really cold fridges and cleaning techniques and whatnot.
Yeah, I think you're finding people are seeing pharma and medtech as a more secure sector to work in. Most of, in the last year, you've seen the hospitality sector getting, really hard hit by COVID. And what we're seeing is the workforce we have, an awful lot of what they're doing, they can actually do from home. So we have a lot of people working from home. We've had people start in client sites working remotely. They get presented with a client laptop, they can log in. So it is a different work environment, and it is hard for people to adjust to that. But then, there is that feeling of being safe as well. And even our people that are in on site that have hands-on roles that need to go in, they're very clear about what the rules are. I think as a sector, we're very risk knowledgeable and very cautious. So it's not unusual. You know, we're used to managing cross-contamination. So putting COVID restrictions in place isn't a challenge to people. Yeah. So, you know, you're used to hearing, oh, well, there's a one-way system in the office. You go in one door, you come out the other door. So we do see, and there's a big interest of people moving out of sectors and coming into the pharma sector because they're seeing there's a bit more job security there. You know, it was one of the sectors that was up in the last year rather than down in terms of their output.
Yeah, it's interesting even to have seen how the figures flipped, as you mentioned. Hospitality just dropped off the edge of things, as it were. But for yourselves, and it's lovely to hear you speak about it, because I can nearly feel your passion about it pinging off the screen. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who would be watching and who would think this is something for me. And I love as well that you talk about it being a small course size, because I suppose nobody wants to get sucked into like a huge, I remember going to college and there was 400 of us in one room, you know, all trying to learn the same thing. So small groups sounds really practical.
Yeah, good sense of the people as well. And from our client perspective, they kind of think, God, you've known these people for at least 12 weeks, 14 weeks before they ever hit our site. So we know you know a lot about them, and we can stand over them because we've seen how they've performed. So, and then the support continues even at the client site. We meet with our people regularly. We've continued professional development. Only last week we had a guest speaker in to talk about Pharma 4.0 and the revolution that's coming and what it means. So trying to put some practical know-how. So we do, you know, try and keep a hold of our people and see how they're getting on, and coach and mentor them as well, because, you know, a 12-week program is one thing, but it doesn't end there.
For sure. Well, look, thank you again so much. And I'll take this opportunity to remind people that, of course, Innopharma they have a virtual stand here at the Virtual Recruitment Expo. So for people who've been watching you speak so passionately about it, if they want to have a conversation, I know you've got people there, you'll have some of your recruitment agencies. So I would urge you to go and chat directly and see what kind of angles you can chat about and get in on and do the course, and maybe even find yourself in a whole new interesting realm of employment. It was a real pleasure to get to hear you speak today, Audrey, from Innopharma. Thank you so much.